ground in the aftermath of Charlie's assassination. Noah Rothman, welcome. Can you give people the succinct summary of what you were talking about today or yesterday on the Commentary podcast?
In relation to the some of the category errors that you're referencing,
Yes.
because yes,
Yes.
they do abound in the literature. So I'm broadening this out, the February article, into a book, which will be out next year. And in my research, and this is not necessarily new research, but the categories that are used to describe for law enforcement the individual radicals and individuals who accrete into radicalized into cells, groups that commit terrorist acts, are categorized in a variety of ways. And some of those categories overlap and blend, and through no fault of the people doing the categorization, they have a tendency to underrate the degree to which underrate the violence we're seeing from the left as a distinct category or group. Now, I couldn't say the same for other statistics that are bandied about. Some of them are contributed to by the likes of groups like the Southern Poverty Law Center, which find their way into the mouth of Congressman Seth Moulton and the Nation contributor Joan Walsh. And you can find them everywhere. But they essentially posit that just about 80% or more of political violence in this country comes from the right. The right is the font from which violence springs. And if there is evidence of violence on the left, it is scattered, it is discrete, it is usually attributable to people who have mental illness, and that's the through line, derangement. It has nothing to do with what we're watching, what we've seen over the last decade or more, which seems to me more like the through line being a commitment towards a romantic ideal which manifests in revolutionary violence, and the causes are anti-capitalist and anti-Western. And the events that we see that are attributable to the left are diluted in these formula by attributing right-wing political violence to acts like gang violence, prison violence, Aryan prison violence, domestic incidences of conflict, which clouds the data, muddies the data, and you have to conclude at a certain point that that is the mission, that's the objective, to establish a basis for which motivated individuals with an interest in misleading their audiences can say, well, don't believe the evidence of your own eyes. Look at the statistics. The statistics can't possibly lie.
No, I want to put on the table, it's early, and this is a tentative conclusion, that the assassin of Charlie was motivated by left-wing ideology. It's early. There's a counter narrative developing already, but I don't believe it. Sometimes the obvious is the explanation, and catch it fascist on a bullet is pretty dispositive to my lawyer's mind. But I have three categories for your dissection. Mental illness violence, and that includes the attack on Nancy Pelosi's husband by a deranged individual. It includes probably the assassination of the Minnesota House Speaker. It certainly has been in a lot of school shootings, but I categorize in left-wing violence the school shooting in Minnesota, the school shooting in Nashville, as well as the softball field massacre, attempted massacre in 2017, the two attacks on President Trump, the attempted assassination of Justice Kavanaugh, the Jewish couple murdered in D.C., the murder of Brian Thompson, the CEO of United Healthcare, the burning down of, or the attempt to burn down Governor Shapiro's residence by an anti-Semite, and I put into mental illness the shooting of Gabby Giffords as deranged. Into political on the right, I put J6, obviously, and then I also put the Michigan plot because 9 of the 14 were convicted. And so there was, I may have misheard you. I think I heard you say that it was not really a plot, but 9 of those 14 people have been convicted.
Yeah, I had made a statement on Commentaries podcast that I think was in error insofar as the extent of I had attributed the convictions to individuals who were already working with the FBI, and that some of their acquittals had rendered that case a little hinky. I since have researched it, and I agree with your assessment that that amounts to right-wing violence. And in this book, there will be an element of a mirror that I intend to hold up to the right, insofar as I see them mirroring some of the habits that have led to this condition on the left, viewing individuals, for example, not as individuals, evaluating them as groups. January 6th, as bad as it was, what pales in comparison to the pardons which reflect precisely the logic that Joe Biden appealed to when he pardoned people not on the basis of their individual convictions, but on the category to which he believed they belong, which ended up granting commutations to individuals who were convicted of horrible violent acts. They were only considered nonviolent because of plea deals, et cetera, so forth. That's separate from this. You raised a lot of issues there. I wrote down a couple of them. I want to get to them. On the part of this killer, that, as you say, the evidence does seem to be moving in a certain direction. You said this, catch this fascist. That seems pretty indicative. To me, Bella Ciao is even more so.
Tell me why. I don't understand it. I don't
Yeah,
understand.
sure. This is an anthem that was attributable to Italian partisans during World War II. It was an anti-fascist anthem, but it had been adopted and embraced by the Soviet Union. The Red Army Choir does a stirring version of Bella Ciao that I do recommend to everybody. They were communists, but man, could they harmonize. And that is an anthem for communist and anti-capitalist revolutionaries, has been for the better part of a half century. It has migrated online. It's now a phenomenon online, particularly among far-left TikTok users, Tumblr, Reddit, those sort of ideological ghettos that individuals can retreat to and radicalize in. So that to me is indicative of sort of a far left revolutionary philosophy as well. And one of the people you didn't mention when you were talking about deranged violence was Wesley LePatner, who was murdered this spring, or the summer rather, in central Manhattan by an individual who was walked into an office building and thought he was killing an NFL official. Yeah, because he thought the NFL had done something horrible to him. Now, it doesn't matter what the motives of that person were. What matters is the intellectual infrastructure around the celebration of that slaughter. It was everywhere. There was an outpouring.
I only have a minute.
Sure.
You're going to have to come back and spend an entire show with me when this book comes out. But I want at least a clue as to the antidote. Do you have one? Spencer Cox says, turn off the internet. That won't happen. So what's the antidote?
Yeah. I would not dare posit a solution to the problem of violence in the United States of America. I do not have one, nor do I think anyone does. This is a phenomenon that has been with us for a very long time. What I can identify are trends. And what I see in today's environment over the last decade and a half is a 50-year cycle of violence that is typified traditionally in this country by left-wing anti-capitalist, anti-Western agitation. 1860s and 1870s, 1910, 1920s, 1960s, 1970s, 2010s, 2020s. It's like clockwork, and it is upon us. However, I do see the reaction to this horrific murder being somewhat hopeful. If we were to honor the legacy that has been left to us by Charlie Kirk, we would see far more engagement with each other. And I think that is what we're seeing. We have seen statements that are not perfunctory or rote from Democrats, including some of the people who lit these fires, Jacobin Magazine, Bernie Sanders, honestly and refreshingly saying this is not the way to do it. In fact, those of you who are doing it are working against your interests. More than that, joint statements from Democratic and Republican parties, apolitical venues like the Yankee Stadium holding moments of silence, and everybody asking themselves quietly and out loud, is this the kind of country we want to live in? And honestly, if you answer that question openly and in the way that I think any sane person would, the behaviors that you would model are instinctual. And the conduct that you would no longer countenance is obvious. And we have countenanced in the national discourse a lot of garbage, a lot of trash, a lot of conspiracy theorizing, a lot of flattening individuals and attributing them, or rather relegating them into groups, dehumanizing them. That's got to stop. It has to go. We have entertained that childish impulse for far too long, only so that we can have enlivening political combat with one another. That was a luxury, and it needs to be dispensed with.
Noah C. Rothman, excellent contributions on the Editor's Podcast and on the Commentary Podcast in the last couple of days. Thank you for joining me. Get to work, get that book done, do all the work, do all the categorization, come up with a solution, get back to it. And we'll talk to you next week. Noah C. Rothman on X.